Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's final session of the Ipsos Retail Summit. So while the pandemic really has been raging for almost a year now, can't believe it, time has flown and the economy has opened up, the reality is that health and safety remains an important and very relevant topic even today. In fact, as the economy tries to stay open, taking an objective look at health and safety measures that various brands are taking is perhaps more important today than it was before. During this session, we will discuss the notion of expectation convergence. The pandemic has nudged shoppers to more quickly adopt digital tools, curbside, BOPIS, delivery services for purchases. They now expect to have similar experiences across all buying points. What we've discovered is that trust has been compromised and not all experiences have been satisfactory. We will illuminate shopper expectations that can prepare retailers for re-entry. We will discuss safety protocols and customer engagement implications for operators in a post-pandemic marketplace. But first, John, are you going to advance? Thank you. A quick introduction. I'm Reena Roy, Senior Vice President, Channel Performance, and joining me today to deliver the session is John Atkin, Executive Vice President, Customer Experience. At the end of our presentation, we will invite Danielle Ojiguata, Director of Competitor and Consumer Insights from T-Mobile, to join us for a conversation. Danielle is responsible for the holistic insight strategy, including the management of frontline readiness insights, as well as retail consumer research and studies. Welcome, Danielle. So back in April last year, when certain states started to reopen from the first round of the lockdowns, clients that we worked with across the board turned to us and say, hey, Ipsos, can you tell us what health and safety measures we should focus on as we reopen our stores? What measures will really resonate with most shoppers and drive their confidence to come back to our stores? Brands knew that there was a need to implement health and safety, but then there was really no good answer to what health and safety measures should be and how other brands were actually performing on those key measures. So we set up the Consumer Health and Safety Index to answer the question. What are the key health and safety measures brands can take to stay open and stay profitable? During today's session, we will answer two specific questions. The first one will be customer attitudes towards health and safety, really taking a look at how these attitudes have evolved over the course of the pandemic, and how to drive customer experience while wearing a mask. While it is clear that health and safety is important today as it was last year, the million-dollar question is, how long is it going to stay relevant? Which behaviors will stick? And therefore, what makes sense to invest in? But before we get to answering the two questions, let's quickly review the current state of consumer sentiment when it comes to COVID. Based on the 3 waves of consumer research we conducted as part of the Ipsos Consumer Health and Safety Index, we conclude that, firstly, trust in retailers remain low. Health and safety continues to be 2 times more important than customer service in store. Being a customer experience practitioner, and truly really believing that customer experience is what differentiates the best from the rest, I found this stat extremely interesting. Secondly, there remains an opportunity to charge a premium for brands that get this right. And finally, there are specific measures brands can take to drive customers to return to stores, building long-term trust. During the mystery shop visits, customers observed the health and safety measures being taken that built their sense of trust in a retailer, or in this case, you can see, maybe not. Consumers trust grocery stores and supermarket cleanliness and safety protocols significantly more than other retailers, and also came out tops when it came to perceptions of trust. I must say, it's definitely concerning to see that 1 in 6 customers do not trust any industries for their cleanliness and safety protocols. Furthermore, 1 in 10 consumers don't believe any retailer is doing a good job at implementing health and safety protocols. As I mentioned earlier, there is an opportunity to charge a premium for brands that get it right. You can see here, 28% Americans are willing to pay a premium for products at retailers that do a superior job with health and safety measures. And 55% Americans would stop shopping at a store that does not take health and safety seriously. There you have it. Focusing on these measures provide an opportunity, but not focusing on these measures results in significant risk in customer defection, which in a hyper competitive marketplace and economy, is something you really want to avoid. As part of the consumer research, we asked participants to rate their satisfaction with 25 health and safety measures based on their experiences in store, including measures around cleanliness, use of masks, gloves, presence of sanitizer, distancing measures, and so on. Then we conducted a driver analysis against 5 dependent variables to understand which attributes drive various business outcomes the most. We focused on 2 dependent variables, the ones that drive the most important and actionable outcomes: likelihood to return to stores and likelihood to trust brands. These are the overall drivers of trust. As you can see, drivers of trust speak to more salient features that customers have come to expect around personal safety. Examples are presence of hand sanitizer, employees visibly wiping down high-touch areas. An interesting fact is that employee and employer-provided safety equipment is a top driver for both return and trust and has been consistent across all waves. Consumers want to know that health and safety is a company-driven initiative that demonstrates the brand's commitment to do the right thing. Of the 4,700 stores we mystery shopped in the last wave of the index, 3 in 4 stores did not provide sanitizer at checkout, the number 2 driver of trust. 3 in 5 stores were not observed to have employees cleaning high-touch areas, the number 3 driver of trust. And finally, 3 in 4 stores did not have restrooms with updated cleaning schedules, the number 5 driver of trust. Drivers of return in general point to short-term measures brands can take to drive foot traffic back to stores. Examples are social distancing measures, automatic entrances, plexiglass in store. The notion of expectation convergence is really illustrated when we found that what were identified as drivers of return back in May were drivers of trust in a subsequent wave. This means that the measures that were new back in May are now measures that customers have just come to expect and drive trust. While some brands are truly focusing on health and safety and using this to shape customer return behavior, again, there is a lot left to be done. 4 in 10 stores, employees had masks that were not consistent, implying that they were not supplied by the company, the number 1 driver of return. 1 in 5 stores had no social distancing reminders present in stores, the number 2 driver of return. And only 8 in 10 stores had all customers wearing masks while inside the store, the number 5 driver of return. Just last week, we fielded a question through the Ipsos Coronavirus Consumer Tracker. We asked respondents, what would make you feel comfortable to shop in a physical store again? We asked respondents to select the top 3 attributes. You can see here that the use of masks by both Employees and shoppers are most critical at 47% and 50% respectively. This really reinforces the need for retailers and brands to not relax the requirement on mask wearing, even if the state mandate does not call for it. So there are really two keywords, to describe what brands can do to get it right. Be consistent in implementing the health and safety measures, and be visible, and of course, vocal about it. So for example, if you are, doing employee temperature checks at the start of your shift, make sure you tell your customers about it. It makes a difference. Ultimately, getting this right is not rocket science. It's about picking a few dimensions among key drivers of return and trust for your industry and implementing them consistently and visibly throughout your network. So in short, some of these behaviors and attitudes will certainly last, and brands that continue focus on health and safety will stand to have a competitive advantage in the near to mid-term future by encouraging customers to return to stores, and will also win the long-term customer loyalty by winning over the trust of customers. With that, I will pass it over to my colleague, John Atkin, to walk us through the next section, how to drive customer experience while wearing a mask. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Rina. Hi, everybody. So what have we learned so far? Like Rina said, the focus on health and safety is here to stay and is super important in the retail world, both in terms of what drives trust and customer loyalty, and in how brands can maintain a competitive advantage as people are beginning to go back into the retail space. And one of the key parts of doing this is the role of masks. We have a paper out at the moment on the impact of mask wearing, which we're going to walk through today. And there's some really interesting stuff that you can focus on. But just the last piece that Rina said, the most important things for customers or consumers out in the marketplace, that they are aware that other consumers are wearing masks, other customers are wearing masks, and that employees are wearing masks. So what we're going to talk about today is some of the intricacies of mask wearing and how to maintain experiences, customer experiences, and the differential that customer experience can drive as we navigate this next phase of the pandemic. But at what costs? I mean, masks are going to be here for a while, but they can. How can brands differentiate in customer experience when it's harder to create bonds with customers? Our research shows that masks don't help in enforcing strong relationships, but that there are things that can be done to counter it. But we're going to take you through some of that today, and the message is clear. Understand the nuances of your customers' journeys so that you can put in place standard operating procedures, training development plans to mitigate the potential business risk caused by wearing masks. Masks are everywhere. And it's no surprise that masks, by everywhere, I mean they're in retail stores, they're in grocery stores, they're in banks, they're in schools, they're in every pocket of every jacket that I own. I have enough to last me a month in each of the cars in the garage. And we've all been living in the same world for the last 12 months, navigating things like travel, grocery shopping, backyard play dates with an array of masks of different shapes, colors, and sizes. And even with signs that the pandemic's recent peak is behind us, I believe that masks are going to be part of our public life for quite some time to come. And in the retail environment where we have customers and colleagues coming together, there is a significant opportunity for misinterpretation and degradation of customer experience equity, which has been built up purposefully over the course of the last decade or so. And as you know, there are tight margins between drivers of choice from one brand to the other. And it's often the quality of the experiences that brands deliver that sets them apart from their competitors. But knowing what the issue is can help with ensuring we can manage customer experiences in a different way. And in this first piece of research that we want to talk to you about, conducted alongside Temple University, we see some really interesting and subtle ways that masks change our ability to interpret others when we're interacting with them. In this study, we aim to see how well other people's emotions are interpreted when they are wearing a mask. So for each emotion, you'll see two bars. The one on the left-hand side is when people are not wearing a mask, and the bar on the right-hand side is where people are wearing masks. And firstly, and perhaps not surprisingly, you'll see out there on the right-hand side, there was no discernible difference between how people interpret anger when the other person is wearing a mask. You know, it's a pretty basal or basic instinct, and it's one that's easy to understand. However, when it comes to slightly more nuanced emotions like disgust, sadness, and surprise, there's only around a 50% chance of interpreting those emotions correctly when people are wearing masks. And then happiness and fear are easier to interpret, but still are hampered by mask wearing. In the real world, you know, we see emotions going on between customers or being communicated between customers and colleagues and associates in store, but there are other complicating factors that come with wearing a mask. And from research we conducted with shoppers about mask wearing, we can group the impact into three areas that are usually of paramount importance when delivering an excellent customer experience. One is communicate well. Two, create a comfortable environment for customers to be in. And three, create an enjoyable environment which allows people to make memorable or have memorable experiences. And the details behind the impact of mask wearing are pretty interesting. Notice that it's not just people who, when they're interacting, they have issues themselves, but they can also project onto others having issues, whether it's comfortableness of their mask or other things. The biggest issue that we see is around communication. And this is a consistent theme throughout. Intuitively, given that masks block lip reading, and potentially muffled voices, hearing and understanding are rendered more difficult by masks. More than half of participants said that they did not hear a staff member or that the staff member didn't hear them. And 44% said that staff could not understand them or that they couldn't understand the staff member. So, you know, real issue with communication when wearing masks. Meanwhile, and perhaps not surprisingly, physical comfort is an issue with masks. Again, around 2/5 said that they felt physically uncomfortable while wearing a mask and perhaps cut their trip short, or that the staff member appeared uncomfortable. And then enjoyment drops. Almost 2/5 report that they enjoyed their trip less. Doubtless, this can be attributed to some of the things we're seeing in terms of communication and comfortableness of masks. And while only a small number said that they received a poorer standard of customer service, going back to what Rena says, you know, customer service isn't as important in the new environment where health and safety is of paramount importance. But even if they say that they didn't have a great experience, these compounded issues aren't going to improve overall customer experience equity. But those that had issues were quite definitive on which areas to improve. And again, it comes down to how we can think about communicating. So when asked what can be done to improve and to make things easier, and to make it easier for them to do what they wanted to do, one of the most simple things and the most important things that came out is to have staff speak more loudly. Now, there are other factors that can impact that. You know, not all people who work in retail environments want to or have the ability to do those things. There are other sounds out in the retail environment, but really the overriding message is have staff speak more loudly. Other suggestions include things like improving signage, visual clues, and so on. And these are strong directional recommendations, but each brand will need to interpret and roll out their mask mitigation operating procedures to suit the customers and their brand promise. And so we went a bit deeper with our behavioral science team to understand 4 key areas where training, development, and operating procedures can be put in place to address these communication issues. First is in the importance of maintaining eye contact. I mean, a lot a lot of us have been stuck inside for 12 months and haven't really had much eye contact with anybody apart from our family and pets. And so, making sure that just simple things like encouraging eye contact for people who are frontline in retail environment is going to be super important to convey empathy, to suggest that people are listening and to help to understand the communication process. Body language becomes really important. We've got clients of ours who are encouraging their associates to come out from behind POS systems to talk to customers, again in a safe way, in a health and safety positive way, but ensuring that body language can, with expressive hands, with expressive facial movements, to help to convey language back to, or convey information to customers. Also things like, if a customer asks a question about where something might be, taking the time to take them there themselves, demonstrating where something might be in a retail environment becomes really useful as well, or helping people to understand where technology might be that can help them to support that process. Third one is thinking about voice and sound. We spoke about the importance of having associates speak more loudly in the retail environment, but there's also things like ambient noise in the retail environment, loud music in a retail environment. Things like this should be thought about and looked at on a location or brand by brand and location by location level to understand how you can improve the quality of communication in an environment where it really is hard to communicate. And then, looking at environmental aids, visual aids, posters, interactive devices, embracing the digital transformation which has happened across many industries, and specifically in the retail industry in the last 12 months, would be really important. And it's, I think, something that consumers are getting much more used to when they're in a retail environment. So this session is focused on three key areas. It's focused on a few things, but the three key takeaways from today's session are that, one, health and safety is here to stay as a critical driver of customer trust and likelihood to return. And, for that matter, as a differentiator in the marketplace, customers will go back to the stores and the brands that they know will deliver on this really fundamental issue and choose that brand over somebody else where perhaps it wasn't done as consistently or as visibly, to Rena's point, as we heard earlier. Masks can damage customer experiences. Paradoxically, masks are super important, but they can damage the experience. So, going over and thinking about the ways of updating standard operating procedures, training development programs to help to overcome those communication issues becomes really important. And then, a theme that I've heard in all of today's sessions, and that comes out when we think about what's happened in the last 12 months. 14 months ago, none of us would even think about a world where we would want plexiglass, want buy online, pick up in store to be a significant way that we shop, to want to have hand sanitizer every turn inside of a retail environment. But things have changed. Retailers have done a really good job of going from where we were to where we are now. And we took one of the questions that we keep on being asked is around what the new normal looks like. My guess is we'll have different phases of new normal, like what is normal now is new, what's normal in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 4 years is going to be different. But what that means is that retailers need to continue to listen to what's going on with customers, what their competitors are doing, gain a competitive advantage, and continue to innovate along that process. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in Danielle, who is the Director of Consumer Insights at T-Mobile. Rena introduced her at the beginning. Danielle, I hope you're well. If you can come off mute, that'd be great. So we're going to spend 5 or 10 minutes talking to Danielle about a couple of the things that T-Mobile is doing in the retail environment and has been doing and will continue to do to address health and safety and the return of customers to the retail environment. Danielle, T-Mobile's been through a pretty interesting 12 months, especially considering the acquisition of Sprint. How has the slowdown in retail helped or hindered the onboarding of the Sprint retail footprint?
Yes, thank you for the question, John. It has certainly been quite a year. We closed the merger transaction on April 1st of 2020, so that was really the height of the pandemic. And so when you think about it, all of the plans that we put in place over the previous 2 years in terms of training, how to connect the new teams, all of that needed to change significantly. But our field teams and our HQ teams quickly adapted our plan to ensure that we stayed on track even at the height of COVID. For us, it was really important for us to quickly welcome Sprint customers to T-Mobile. And that meant that on August 2nd, we needed every Sprint and T-Mobile store to serve all customers. So whether you're a T-Mobile customer going to a Sprint store or a Sprint customer going to a T-Mobile store, our stance was we can help you. So during those few months before August 2nd, we made sure to flip our stores so that they all looked about the same as far as brand. We had different systems put in stores, but essentially we didn't slow down. So of course things were different due to the pandemic, but we were still able to meet our target date and serve all of our customers. We've certainly had to change like our plans for training and getting large groups together. And for me, it's interesting because it's been a year now and I still haven't met a lot of people on my team. You know, when you think of two companies coming together, we've never met face to face. All we know is Zoom. So it's really been interesting, but we have not slowed down. Even though the traffic, of course, has died down in terms of the plans for our company, and especially welcoming Sprint customers, we are full steam ahead on that.
Right. Danielle, I mean, one of the things we've spoken about before is the intense focus on customer experience in the T-Mobile family. And so, you know, we've just spoken about wearing masks and the impact on our ability to foster human rapport and build strong relationships because they can impair facial perception and communication skills and what have you. How have you or how has T-Mobile handled training your associates to overcome this barrier in order to maintain an emotional connection with your customers or to create an emotional connection with a new wave of customers that's coming in?
Yeah, that has been a challenge for us. You know, when we reopened our stores, one of the first things we did when we reopened them after the pandemic and we closed for just a couple weeks, and I think late March, we introduced a new survey so that we can really understand the customer experience in terms of now that we have these health and safety protocols in place, now that we may have a few stores closed here and there, what do customers think about their experience? And as you and Rena pointed out, it's not just like what you say and what you do, it's how you say it. And so although we were really focusing on like we need to keep our employees and customers safe, we need to have the right protocols in place, we saw a lot of feedback from customers saying like, it's how you're communicating with me that really sucks. I understand the mask policy, but hey, you can't just say before you say, hi, welcome to T-Mobile, say, where's your mask? Customers still wanted us to show empathy. They wanted us to be understanding. And they really told us like, it's really how I'm being treated that is affecting me. And I think some of that just had to do with the nature of the pandemic. There was a lot of tension there. And especially for our frontline workers going to work every day. So we had to be understanding on both sides of what was happening with our frontline and our customers. And then you guys talked about plexiglass. Well, with T-Mobile, we really focus on side-by-side selling. So we want to be right next to the customer, showing them everything we're doing in the system. If we're working on their device, we want to be side-by-side. But of course, with COVID, you have to be 6 feet apart, or maybe now you have like a countertop in between just to be really safe. And so then our employees weren't used to over communicating because side-by-side, you're kind of just going through the motions together. But now customers were saying, well, they just kind of took my device and started doing things with it, and I had no idea what was going on. So we really had to emphasize to the front line, like it's not just about the distance that you have with customers, it's about how you communicate with them and how you bring them along for the transaction and keep them in the loop. So it was just interesting on the things that we had to focus on. You have these health and safety protocols in place, but then you also have to focus on the softer side, being empathetic and really serving our customers the right way. And those were some things we didn't think about initially, but we've had to adapt and change over time to accommodate that feedback.
Right.
Thanks, Danielle. And you mentioned some, you mentioned some key points around the challenges and how T-Mobile had to make provision and pivot very quickly from a retail environment execution standpoint, and the fact that you had to deal with empathy. What were your greatest challenges, if you may, in a retail shopping experience, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I'd say one of the big challenges was the signage. So, of course, with every change in the guidelines, you had to have the right signage on the front door, the right signage in store as far as what devices are clean, how often are they sanitized. You had to have social distancing stickers in place. And then when you think about it, as August 2nd, we had 15,000 stores because we have T-Mobile, former Sprint, and Metro by T-Mobile doors. So that's a lot of stores and footprints to think about when you're like, what type of signage goes where? And then the mandates constantly changed. So mandates changed, and then they weren't consistent across the country. So we really had to be flexible and make sure that we're partnering with vendors who are able to respond quickly to our changing needs. And also thinking about the customer experience, the signage had to be kind of firm and saying like, hey, we require masks, but also welcoming. So you don't just want to put out this harsh message, which may turn people away. It's like, we want to keep everyone safe, and that's why we're asking you to wear a mask. So we certainly had to adapt in terms of how quickly we could turn around this new signage and how we thought about how customers perceived what we were saying. So that was completely new to us. And then other changes we had to go through was some states would say you can only serve outside. So then you had to think about, well, do you have like curbside service? Do you serve people inside their store or inside their car? Because at that point, you can't even do buy online, pick up in store. So for us, it was really about gathering multiple teams together, making sure that our frontline teams are included when we're thinking about how do we quickly adapt to these changing needs and make sure that we're responding to customers. Because one thing we saw was that customers wanted to come to the store. Customers would say like, hey, I'm a healthcare worker and my device is broken. I need to have it fixed today. I don't want to go online. I don't want to call care. So we were very insistent of the retail needs to stay open and we need to make sure that we can serve customers. So it's certainly been a year in the pandemic, but it's been a year where we've had to consistently adapt and think about how we can better serve customers and make sure that our messages are getting across.
That's great, Danielle. As you were speaking, I quickly remembered one of the slides that I presented earlier today, where it's really about being consistent and then being visible and communicating that to all your customers. So when you talk about the signages and how you had to be consistent across all your doors, irrespective of brand, and yet consistently having to be agile to both changing needs from both the customers as well as the mandates, the moving mandates as it went through as well. But overall, amazing work done by T-Mobile. I know it was a huge challenge last year for all retailers, but thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you, Rena. And I'll just add one last point. What was really helpful for us was partnering with Ipsos because we monitored our health and safety standards. So you could have customer feedback, which is great, but we really wanted to see store by store do customers have the right signage in place so that we can make sure that we're being really consistent. So that was really helpful for us during this time.
Thank you, Danielle. That is great feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're about at time, so unfortunately we don't have time to do Q&A, but we will answer any questions that came in. We'll do that via email. But I would just want to turn it back to John or Rena. Any closing thoughts for us on your session?
No, I mean, we spoke about the role of health and safety. And we come at it from a couple of different directions. One is from a compliance perspective, for understanding what needs to happen, and as Danielle alluded to, that can evolve, and it can evolve both by geography and over time, also by sector, and a store that's inside a mall versus a store that's on a main street. There are different types of things that need to happen. So understand what you need to do and evolve. Two, understand that this is as much about consistency and visibility. So making sure that each and every time somebody comes in, those health and safety standards are being met, and that you are talking about some of the things that aren't necessarily happening front and center. So, that people are getting temperature checked on the way in the store, that people are wiping down surfaces on some sort of regular basis. And then really thinking about what a current normal looks like, which is mask wearing, which is continued public health guidance on social distancing. And the implications for that are that we need to think about that, well, we need to think about that it's going to be here for a while, so what are the implications, and B, we need to understand what we need to do and train out in the retail environment to overcome and to maintain or gain a competitive advantage against competitors, because these are the margins which are going to help organizations see through the rest of the pandemic and into the new world.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Danielle. It was a particular pleasure to hear from you and hear it brought to life. Thank you. And now I will close the day. So if you can go to the next slide. So in closing, and you can go to the next slide, John, before I recap some of the findings from today or some of the learnings we heard, I want to thank all of our panelists and guest speakers today. You were fantastic, thought-provoking, and made this event truly special. So thank you to all. Before I recap some of the learnings, I wanted to share an experiment with you. So as an experiment, I took all my email subject lines from last year and this year over the same 4 days in March, only the non-confidential email subject lines, and I created word clouds with them, showing what at least I was talking about or seeing coming through my email. And last year it was all about the pandemic and urgently assessing impact, which kind of all deserve capital letters. And we were talking a lot about Amazon. And this year it's still about the pandemic, still front and center, but we're discussing what's new, what does the future hold, what should our strategy be going forward? And we're talking more about Walmart, Kroger, and Instacart. So this year is all about anticipating the future. And I hope we helped bring it into focus just a little bit today. And I promised we get back to the 3 Ps, which we think are the new imperatives in retail. And so what is our new playbook based on some of the things we heard today? People, experience, purpose. So we heard to listen closely to employees, to understand that our customers and shoppers are going to be more in system one than they've ever been before because they're stressed and they're overwhelmed and uncertain. So to make sure our touch points, our communications, our nudges are all within system one in mind. Encourage and enable those new emotions and behaviors with new rewards, looking to provide the indulgences and feed that irrational exuberance that we're seeing, which is really a change versus pre-COVID, and communicate it guilt-free. They've earned it. And very importantly, better represent diversity and inclusion. Not a lot of examples of good retail practices in this area. We can do better as a group. Experience, build trust through the experience. We know that trust has, in some cases, weakened over COVID. We have several key pain points that we want to address in health and safety, checkout, and the e-commerce experience, which is popular but still not optimized. And we want to deliver on our promise and reflect our purpose across every aspect of the experience. And lastly, really focus on that purpose, activate from the inside out, which starts with employees, creating products, services, and businesses that do good, and seeking that corporate social opportunity, which will create profitability and sustain our commitment to purpose going forward. And I promised that we would have some predictions here today. I call them big, hairy, audacious predictions, BHAP, what's going to stick, where to place your bets. Tony led us off by saying that September 26th is the date we're getting back to normal. So that's certainly big and audacious. Karen said we should probably expect to land on 10% more working at home than we had in 2019. And I'm going to add that about 20% of consumers, even as things reopen, are very reluctant to venture out. So that's going to be a stickiness. So we want to continue to invest in out of home, as a lot of pent up demand is going to roll out through the summer, which means that restaurants will thrive again. Grocers need to transform to keep that business that they had, and stores are going to return, but with new expectations. Then the pendulum's not going to swing all the way back to pre-COVID on some of the things as we return to normal. We did share that we think there's going to be some stickiness in in-home behavior. So at least a modest decrease in on-the-go versus what we saw in 2019. So that's less shopping trips, less small format specialty convenience trips, more cooking, more shopping, online shopping, delivery, etc., than we experienced pre-COVID. But pendulum's not going to stay all the way where we were in 2020. And again, greater consideration on where to shop, making sure that we deliver that purpose-driven equity in everything that we do, because of the tendency shoppers and consumers are going to have to be more selective. And I will end the day with two more short things. One is one remaining factoid, because we're at Ipsos and we deliver facts and insights. So we asked people what they did not do in summer 2020 and what they're unlikely to do in 2021. And half of adults in the US said that they did not dine at a restaurant or shop at a shopping center or mall last summer. That is going to increase this summer, but there's still about a quarter of Americans who are going to be reluctant to do either of those things. So it shows a slow rollout and some stickiness towards COVID behavior. And lastly, I want to leave you with a promise that you can count on Ipsos to keep you ahead of the pack and seeing the future and identify both the temporary and the permanent effects of the pandemic and help you distinguish which is which. So thank you very much. Thanks again to our co-presenters, and Ellen, back to you.
That was really great, Wendy. And also, again, a big thank you to our 20+ presenters today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you submitted a question that we did not answer live, we will respond by email. You will also receive an email with a direct link to today's recorded presentations. And one last time, I want to draw your attention to the webinar console, where we've made available for download our research magazine, What the Future, exploring many of the topics we discussed here today. So please take a look at that. Of course, reach out to us at any time. We look forward to speaking with you. That now concludes today's summit. Have a wonderful day.